We've had a question on chat from Laurel in Seattle. She says, fascinating progression adventure. I am deeply sorry about your friend Russell, but he seems to be creating fresh pathways and bridges as you are. Thank you for your story. And a prayer symbol and a leaf.
That's it's fine. The reason I think, and I don't know, when Russell came through with Lorraine, I think when he's saying you've got a job to do, I think my job now, after all the research, I think my job is to tell people about my experience, not necessarily try to make them believe in what they don't want to believe, because that would have a detrimental effect, as it did with mine, on your own psyche. You do believe you're going mad, but just to put this information out there. I started researching what's called. I'll go into this in greater detail in the coming weeks. The 100th monkey experiment, where consciousness, when more people understand something, consciousness gets to a tipping point where it's just accepted by people that have never seen that point of view before. And I think my job is to help tell people about my experience and make them wonder. Because the minute they start wondering and not believing, it's really important you don't believe one person. Because, when somebody tells you a story, it's just a story. It's just words. It's not until you start delving deeper yourself and looking and trusting your own intelligence that you realize whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah. When you were telling the story about the TV and it kept changing channels, turning on and off, it came to me, the way I perceived it when you were saying it, that it felt to me that it was your mother that was doing that to show you I'm still here, I'm still around. But you take from that what you will, but that's the message I got when you were saying that. So I don't know.
That was my
That was your theory. Okay,
my
that's great.
presumption afterwards.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'm just going to say
that's quite a regular thing, That's quite an often somebody dies and then the close member of the family get all these weird experiences. When my brother passed, his family kept getting a particular light in the kitchen that my brother designed. It kept flicking on and off. Keeps flicking on and off. And when we cremated him, after that fact, it didn't hardly do it at all. But in the lead up, flicking on and off.
I think they stay behind sometimes to see the funerals and stuff. My sort of healing mentor, he is undertaker as well, and he says quite often he sees the spirits of the people he's burying. They're there watching to see what's seeing how the service is and who's there and what have you. So it's quite interesting.
That must be incredibly frustrating for them because nobody can see me, nobody can hear me, and I want to tell them I'm all right. So how do we go about this? What have I got to do?
Yeah.
One thing I did want to ask you, and I mentioned it to John before in chat, but on the Cauldron Bible, is there a way you could kind of like make a little summary to kind of explain what makes the Cauldron Bible so important compared to other Bibles and everything? Because I'm pretty sure everybody who's watching isn't quite aware of what the Cauldron Bible is. You know what I mean? So,
well, the Cauldron Bible is actually older than our accepted version of the Bible. It's supposed to be, and I say supposed to because I've not come across any evidence to agree with this. It's supposed to have been written by the Hebrews when they were being led out of Egypt by Pharaoh. And it was in the Glastonbury. I'm trying to recall this now. This was a long, long while ago. The Glastonbury, it was kept in Glastonbury Cathedral, I think it was. And then they had a fire. And then it was one of the finest, the last things that they rescued from the fire. And it's been picked up by the, I think it was the Colcadian Trust, something like that. It's on the internet. You can type it in, Kolbrin Bible, Kolbrin, Kolbrin Bible. If you go and have a look, it will explain rituals that was held. I think it's inside the Great Pyramid, although Graham Hancock, recently I watched a piece of Graham Hancock. He's not sure it was in the pyramid, although it does explain 3 separate chambers, one down, one middle, and one up. And he said it may be one of the buildings that are now no longer there outside the pyramid. But it goes through the process of how they used to make a king a pharaoh, and this was the only thing that made the king the pharaoh. So much so, the Hyksos that was in, I think it was in Upper Egypt, they sent 2. Oh, again, I'm trying to recall this. They sent two or three. It might have been 3 ruffians, if you like, to go and see the pharaoh, who the pharaoh at the time was Sekenre Teo II, and they've found the body of this pharaoh. Freemasons know this pharaoh as Hiram Abiff. So they've gone to find this pharaoh and get the truth out of him. But what they done was they went to find the pharaoh because it was the recipe of this brew that was delivered to the kings to make them pharaohs that they didn't have. They owned the Upper or Lower Egypt, I can't remember now. But the Hyksos tribe wanted this brew. They wanted to experience what the pharaohs experienced when taking it. And they ended up killing Sekenre Teo II. His body has been found, and he's got, when you're in Freemasonry, it's explained to you that Hiram Abiff was killed with a maul, side of the head, the front of the head, and I think at the back of the head. And the 3 people hit him once each with this stone making maul that they used to carve the stones with. And the whole gist of it was that they've got this body, and as soon as I see the dents on the body where the skull was cracked either way, I immediately thought Hiram Abiff. I've done a research, and a lot of people have come to the conclusion that it was Hiram Abiff as well. So, and I didn't search until I'd come to that conclusion. Again, if you do a lot of searching, you'll be swayed by someone else's opinion. So it's best not to look at someone else's output before you've come to your conclusion. But yeah, the Kolbrin Bible goes into this ritual of the twice born quite deeply. There are certain groups. I was watching a documentary a while ago where it was the Templars. They went to, I think it was Portugal. They went to Portugal and they conducted this ceremony that had the same outcome as the ritual of the twice born, and they put them in the same type of place. They put them in a cave and moved a big stone across the entrance to the cave. That's the general gist of what I know about the Kolbrin Bible. I've forgotten a lot of it, but it's a fascinating book, and it has as much, in my opinion, it has as much belief behind it, for me anyway, as the Holy Bible. Possibly a little bit more belief because A, it's older, and B, it explains to you certain things that are real. I mean, our Bible would have you to believe that there's a man that walked on water. He was a magic man, and he turned water into wine. Well, now I know water into wine is a metaphor. The Freemasons have been turning water into wine for donkey's years. On the senior warden's desk in a lodge, they have I think they call them ashers. They're square cut stones. One's a rough cut and one's a square cut. It's perfectly square. That can be the example of water into wine. It's alchemy, to be fair, turning an uneducated person into an educated person, turning an unenlightened person into an enlightened person. And that's why I called the Water into Wine podcast the Water into Wine podcast, is because I'm departing this knowledge. Some people are going to listen. Some people are just call it nonsense, and that's fine. I'm happy with that. But I'm just trying to do my little bit that I think is right.
I appreciate that. I had a little hiccup there. I ended up getting cut off Jitsi and came back on, so I apologize about that. But I just wanted to kind of get a little bit of an elaboration on that, because it's something that I know is important to you from when I listened to you talk and everything. And I noticed that you didn't like put too much of an elaboration on it, so I just wanted to hear a little bit more about it.
If I hadn't have taken part in the Masonic rituals, namely the ritual of the twice-born, without the use of the chemicals that the Egyptians used to use, if I hadn't have taken part in that, I would have probably not put so much faith on the Colburn Bible. But it's because of the situations that I've been put in, and I was conducting rituals, and while I'm doing it, I'm going, I've got all the regalia on, all the apron and all the rest of it. It's all dark, and they'd take it. And I was the one, I think they call it the false death. Freemasons call it the false death. And I was taking part in this, and I'm thinking to myself, this can't be happening, surely. I'm reading about this. I know what this is about. And it's all about Hiram Abiff. It was a fascinating time.
I was going to ask you, your medium that you spoke about, Lorraine. Do you have any dealings with her anymore now?
Yes, I still go to see her every so often. And she told me about doing this, what I'm doing right now.
Really?
And she named it, what did she say? She said it's, how did she say it? She went, I keep asking, because her spirit guide is Ramos. She said, I keep asking Ramos, when is this going to start? When are you going to start doing your job?
Right.
And he's told me, and she said, it was a year beforehand, she told me. She said, she's going to start doing it then. And it was about, I gave one interview then, exactly when she said, which led on to a second interview by someone else. And that's when you saw it, and then I'll come and done it with you. So, and I've done quite a few of these now.
Well, it's coincidence, isn't it? I was going to say about your meeting with. Oh yeah, the movie. It never got finished, did it?
No, it didn't get finished. It needed a lot more money spent on it. The director and writer was, he was a very intelligent man, but that I don't think that was his forte, although he's been an actor for quite a few years, and he could not push it through the final hurdle.
No, it's a shame.
And it's, you can search it online now at the IMDb database. It's The Rapture, and there was Danny Dyer in it, Martin Kemp, Gary Kemp, Stephen Burkhoff, Alison Doody, Lois Winston, and the names just kept falling out of the sky of all these people that ended up doing parts in this film. And as far as I know, it's still sitting on a hard drive somewhere.
Oh, it's a shame. I'd like to see that.
Well, at certain parts of it didn't make sense, because this director was putting parts together without explaining. And they were very esoteric and occult parts, without explaining why that was being done. So certain parts didn't make sense. I see the connection. I know the connection. But, the general person that isn't into this subject doesn't see the connection.
Okay. I was going to say about your like, when you were talking to Errol about the things he said, and I just thought, it was just mad. It was just crazy, I couldn't believe it when he, the very chances. What's the chances you meeting some random person in a movie who happened to be next door to when your best friend, and when he got murdered? It was just like, wow, you know what I mean? It's
that
like,
was one of the biggest things that it was, seriously, and that's the best way I can explain it. It was like a slap round the face. Pay attention. And I kept going, this can't. And when his eyes widened, I took a step back because he was quite a big fella, Errol, and he's ex-military. And when his eyes widened like that, dealing with the subject matter, I thought, hang on a minute, he's got something to do with this. So I took a step back because I didn't want to be in the line of fire. I didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you. So I took a step, and we ended up being really good friends because of this connection with Russell. But yeah, it was a very strange time, and that was. I remember having a cup of tea after that, and just sitting down and thinking about what's just happened. Is it real? Is it? You know, I was still thinking to myself, is it real? Is it make believe? Am I just imagining all this?
yeah. So I got told by my mentor ages ago, when I mentioned earlier, he said everything means something. He said every thought, everything, it all means something. Except obviously there's the thoughts which you know aren't you, like the bad thoughts, stuff like that. If you get an image or thought in your head, think about it. He said, reflect on it, because it could mean something. It may not mean something like here and now, but it could mean something in a month's time or 2 months' time or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm a great believer in that.
Well, after this research, I now know everybody, every person walking the earth is psychic.
Yeah,
they just don't realize they are, and they squash the thoughts that they should be paying attention. And this is a very subconscious and conscious mind. Your conscious mind, which is the patriarchal side, it's the male side, or the sun, as it would be in Egypt.
Yeah.
It's to take part and to bang nails in and to do arithmetic, and it's the very logical stuff. Go and earn money and wallpaper in and all that. It's all the logical male things. Whereas your subconscious, the right-hand side of your brain, controls the left-hand side of your body, which is why left-handed people tend to be more creative. More left-handed people tend to be psychic or mediums. Whether they realize it or not is irrelevant. They get more of a gut feeling, and that was the matriarchal side, the mothering side, the female side, and that represents the moon in ancient Egypt. And these were, I now know, the two eyes of Horus, the Egyptian sun god. When you see an all-seeing eye, I mean, this goes through Turkey and Greece and all the rest of it. It's a good luck sign. When someone buys you one of these, it's a good luck sign. It comes from the all-seeing eye of Horus, which normally it's the left eye that you've seen, because it's controlled by the right-hand side of the brain, which controls the left-hand side of the body, and that's the subconscious side. That's the side that's connected, where the mediums get this information from. And the training that mediums go through, the meditation, is all to train you. It doesn't make you psychic. It's already there. It's done to train you to drop your conscious mind and listen to the subconscious, or let the subconscious views come through without changing them to try and mean something.
Yeah. So you would say... Oh, sorry. Oh, I thought you were thinking. So would you say that a person who becomes more open to their psychic abilities is actually using more of their brain, or is that totally different? Do you think it's not linked to your physical brain in that sense at all?
I would say, if you're becoming aware that you thought somebody, they call this, Carl Jung called this a synchronistic event.
Yeah.
If you think someone's going to call, then all of a sudden they call. That happens to everybody. You think of somebody's name, and all of a sudden the number plate in front of you spells that name, or the initials of that person you were thinking of.
Yeah.
These are synchronistic events, and these have come from your subconscious. Now, these, I think personally, these happen thousands and thousands and thousands of times, at least hundreds every single day to every single person. But we're trained to ignore them, number one, and call it a coincidence. There are no such things as a coincidence. It doesn't exist. And B, to pay attention. And as soon as you start paying attention to them, you start noticing them more. And that's harder to do because we're trained to ignore them. So you think, I'm going to pay attention to these. So you notice 1, 2, 3, and then you forget to pay attention, and they fall by the wayside again. They keep happening, but we just don't realize that they're happening. There was a very interesting blog I read on the internet years ago, and I haven't been able to find it since. It was a guy that noticed these synchronistic events were happening during his life. So what he decided to do was just jot them down, because he had no idea why they were happening. Because whenever it happened to him, he just saw the one event and not the line of procession, what they were doing. So he started in a diary, writing this diary down, and every single day he had this happen and that happened. He noticed this, he thought that, and this happened. And then at the end of, I think it was 2 years, he got 2 diaries worth, sat down with a cup of tea, and then he started reading right from the start. And he said when he got halfway through, these events were controlling my life, and I felt like an actor playing a starring role in a film about my life. And he said that's the closest I can explain it, because these events were directing him, and he was originally just ignoring them. But by the end of it, he was paying a lot of attention to them. And they direct you. Gut feelings. Nothing ever just happens. It's irrelevant. It's all of it is planned. A medium will tell you that we have free choice, and my belief is, yes, you do have free choice. You can choose whether to wear the socks and the big shoes, or to wear boots and little socks. You can choose the color of your socks, because it means nothing. You can choose whether you're going to do something or not do it, because that's the type of person that you are. And I've noticed in my life, if something comes up and I react a certain way, if it's the wrong way that I've reacted, it will come round and happen again in a couple of years, or a year, or 6 months, but with different people doing it. So now I reacted a certain way from a situation. It came back a few years later. So now I know I've got to react a different way. That wasn't the right way. So we react a different way. All of a sudden, it all disappears. Almost as if I'm being taught lessons of how to react.
Well, we're here to learn. This is, in my view, the Earth is a learning planet. That's why we're here to learn. Some lessons are very hard. Some lessons are very traumatic.
Yeah.
But that's what we're here for, is to learn. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
No, I've heard some things too in the last, this makes what, third, maybe fourth interview I've heard of yours. And what really pops out to me is, like, you always mention the number 3. And I don't know if you realize that or not. And if you do, could you tell me what your thoughts are on that? Because I've noticed, like, the 3 just keeps popping out. You know what I mean? Have you noticed that?
I haven't noticed that I was doing that, but that's very interesting, because numerology does play a very big part in everybody's life.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to mention that, because it does seem like the number 3 seems to always come out. Like, I've actually had to go through and make notes of some of the stuff that you've said in the interviews when I interviewed you. So I just figured I'd mention that and see what your take is on that.
Well, when you look into the quantum physicists are now coming to the conclusion that this is what do they call it? It's a computer program that we are put into, and we are part of the program. Bill Hicks, a fantastic comedy. The man's got it, and he was heavily into his drug use, as he's quite open with. And he says that it's just a ride. This is all just a ride. Well, when you look at and that's a really good thing, it's just a ride, Bill Hick. Put that into YouTube and you'll see the end of one of his comedy shows, and that it describes reality 100%. Quantum physicists say, because of this numeric thing that goes on. Everything around us in nature, in reality in general, can be pulled back to a numeric value. That's how this reality is put together. So that's how they're coming to the conclusion, or one of the reasons anyway, that this is a computer program that we're in, built by whoever. Nobody knows that. For whatever reason, nobody really knows. Although it's expanding consciousness, you being here is just expanding consciousness itself. So, yeah, that everything does come back to a number. So it wouldn't surprise me if I'm doing something unwittingly and mentioning certain numbers over and over again. But I'm going to keep my eye open for the number 3 now.
It's interesting you said about winning like a program, you know, winning a. I think that. How do you think that would change if suddenly, say, sake of argument, is 10% of the world's population are sort of awakened and open to their psychic abilities? How do you think that would change if suddenly it went from 10% to 50%?
Oh, that would.
Now that's going to change stuff, isn't it?
I would think it would just start changing. There is a reason I'm going to mention this. I started researching the Mayan prophecies, and the gist of it is, I'll go into those at a later podcast. But it was never the end of the world. It was a return of I think they called them Bactons. It was the return of the original Bacton, which is a series of 5,000 whatever years. And it's the golden age. It's the number 1. So we reached number 5. Now we're going to go through number 1 cycle again. Everything's cyclical. And that was the return of Mother Nature. So this, because of that, and a few other bits and pieces I stumbled across, this is the second coming. This is a return to understanding Mother Nature, the earth, and all the natural forces, invisible as well, forces upon the earth. You know, even that, I say to somebody, invisible forces, and they laugh. So I said, we laugh now. Well, there's no such thing as invisible forces. Okay. So go to YouTube, type in cymatics, and you can see the very basic building blocks of reality. And you type in sound levitation, and they're moving things. Scientists are now moving things and lifting things and lifting them up, lifting them down, turning them over with sound, just using sound. Magnetism, the wind, and it goes on. They're all invisible forces. These are all natural things. There's no spooky dillos. There's nothing that is going to surprise anybody that understands this subject. Witches, so-called witches, black and white witches, have understood this for thousands of years. They're just masters of the art of understanding reality in its most minutest form. And this minutest form is these invisible forces. Gravity is an invisible force, magnetism, and I don't think we've discovered how many of these forces there actually are. So we're all directed by this, all of us, and we just ignore everything that's going on.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's the way of looking at it. I'm pretty much out of questions now. I don't know if Roger's got any. I
hope I haven't bored you too much.
No, I find it very interesting. I always do every time I speak to you, in all fairness. I really do. I don't know if Roger's there. Is he gone for a coffee or something? He doesn't seem to be answering.
I was done with the letter or the number 3. So.
Oh, right, okay.
The only thing I gotta say is I remember the last time I got shocked when it came to electricity. So I know all about invisible forces, and some of them don't feel good, you know.
Yep.
So, when people say this stuff like that, I completely understand where you're coming at, because like there's tons of things that are energy that are invisible. So for you to understand the concept of electricity and then say that there's no such thing as invisible energy forces, then that's not really too intelligent.
No, it's not. It's a very blind way to live your life, to be honest with you. And you're missing 99.999999999% of what's going on around you.
Yep. That's all I have. You did a really good interview, and I appreciate being a part of it, being able to ask you some questions.
I appreciate being here, really. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to just get all this out of my head, which is stuffed full of facts and figures and experiments that I've come across over the years, like the double slit experiment and so on and so forth. But I'm just happy to be able to get this out.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this as well. Because really how it's gone, and really, really interesting, especially the fact where your Lorraine predicted this sort of happening and stuff, because I'm normally one that can see the future. I can see snippets, I see patterns of the future, but I literally 6 months ago I had no idea I'd be doing stuff like this. Absolutely nothing at all. It just started from Roger interviewing me, and it just thinking, oh, there's something in this. It just awakened something, and then I interviewed you then a few weeks after, and a few other people, and it's just gone from there. But I had absolutely no idea that I'd be doing this. You know what I mean? It's just funny how things work out, doesn't it? It's really odd sometimes.
That's life. Life
Yeah.
in general. You've got to follow your gut feeling. You have to.
Yeah.
If you wait in line and go to work, come home, and just do mundane things, watch whatever you want to watch on TV, and worry about who shot JR and that's such a mundane life, when this reality is so amazing,
People don't realise just how amazing nature is, for example. They just don't realise how much. It's hard to put into words. Like, look in a forest, they think, oh, that's pretty, but there's just so much there. When you connect to it, I just can't put into words. It's just so much, and the people of this planet are trying to destroy the earth, or the way they are, the way they live and stuff. And it's just like, if you could really experience what I feel when I'm in nature, so to speak. I know you understand what I mean, and Roger. It's just, I just can't put into words. It's just amazing. It's a connection. It's a connection, yes, with your higher self, whatever. But when you're out in nature, it's just like, I just can't put into words. It's like I can't express it. It's just an amazing experience. It's just, I can't put it into words. I really can't. I just feel it. The more awakened I am, the more I can feel just how special nature and this planet Earth really is. But before I was awakened, I just never thought anything of it. But now you just can't put it into it. You just experience it more, and it just.
What a big thing for me was when I discovered the shape of the nests inside a beehive, the shape of the nest inside a wasp nest, the alignment, the dust alignment on the northern pole of Saturn, and the Mercury going around the sun and the Earth. And every time it's in alignment, if you draw alignments between those things, it's the same shape. It's exactly the same shape. And there's only 3 planets that are like this, and that's Venus, Mercury, and Earth, all orbiting around the sun. This is not 100%. This is not an accidental thing. If the moon was a little bit further away, we would have problems with floods and so on and so forth. Yeah. If the moon was any closer, we would have other problems that occur. It would probably iron out over years. I'm not into that thing that everything has been man-made. There is no man-made, but everything is in its place for a reason. And I've got a friend who's very religious. He said, yes, because God put it there. I said, well, God's a perception. I've spoken to people that have felt the presence of God, and there's no person, there's no man, there's no woman. They're all feminine attributes that they explain. That's where the phrase Mother Nature comes from. But it's 100%. It's not a man, because there is no sex in this alternate area,
Yeah.
which we'll discuss this at a later podcast. But it's this isn't by accident, but no person, there isn't an invisible man sitting on a cloud with a big wide beard and a magic wand. It doesn't exist. That's not there.
No. I know. I was going to say something then. Slightly off topic. But you were saying about the planets. I had a vision years ago of I was going to different dimensions. I went through a spell when I was meditating, going through different dimensions every night. I was in all different worlds. And one world I was in, it was raining fire from the sky. It was like a planet was dying. Okay. And I never thought anything of it. I ended up talking to a guy on one of my interviews called Mr. Robot, and he said, "Oh, you mean such and such?" Said the name of it. He said, "If you look on our planet," he said, "there's an area." He just said between two planets there's an asteroid belt. He said there used to be a planet there, and he said the name of it. He said I had that. He said you had that vision as well because he had the same vision. His girlfriend had it, and he mentioned somebody else. And he said apparently there's videos about it on YouTube, which I still haven't looked into, that there was originally another planet which got destroyed by where the asteroid belt is now or something like that. So he says, I've never looked into it any further than the conversation I had with him. But I don't know if you've ever come across anything like that when you're research about anything.
Well, in one of the things I researched and read about in the Colbrin Bible, they go on about the planet, and I'm going to try and recall this, Nibiru, was it?
Oh yeah, but not that. Yeah, I've heard of that planet. Yeah, but it wasn't called that one. He said to me.
An elliptical movement, and it isn't round, so it doesn't revolve around anything, but it's a stretched circle, and that's why this planet that is coming back to us. Certain people say the Watchers came from this planet, and so on. They're the fallen angels, so on and so forth. I don't know anything about that, but yeah, this planet, and I'm sitting and waiting for science to turn around and go, there's another planet that's just turned up, and I go, at that point, this is one of those pieces of information that I don't accept nor delete. I just store them in my head. And as soon as science says that, I'll go, here we go. Right, now let's look back into Nibiru and what happens. But yeah, that's the only thing, that planetary alignment that I've come across that used to be a planet that nobody's been able to prove.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm the guy that gets into all that weird stuff. So like, I can kind of give you an input on it. Like Mr. Robot, the one he's talking about is like more of the New Age storyline, but where all that originally comes from is Zachariah Sitchin. And Zachariah Sitchin mentioned Nibiru. He also mentioned a planet called Tiamat. Now Tiamat is an old Sumerian goddess, and his theory was that they used that as a goddess when in reality it was that planet that was supposed to consist of the asteroid belt.
Right.
And what happened was a catastrophe happened, and it blew that planet up, which eventually created the asteroid belt. Now, I'm not going to say I believe in it or don't believe in it, but that's the story that was laid on to me about it. But as time went on, the story kind of grew, so it's not just Zachariah Sitchin now. It's more people that believe in it, but they put a different name on it. Planet X.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
Right. I just thought it was weird that as I was telling Mr. Robert about this vision I had, and he said, "Oh, you had it as well." And I thought, "What?" You don't expect someone else to like think. He said, "And my girlfriend had it," and he was telling about other people who had it, and I thought, "Oh my god!" Because it was I just remembered it being red, and I just saw all this fire coming down, and that was pretty much it. It was really short and sweet, and I forgot all about it. We were just talking, because I was talking to Mr. Robot. He was talking about hallucinogenics and how it would open up his mind and stuff. Not that I, like yourself, I don't encourage anyone to touch drugs. I don't do them myself. Just saying that's what awakened him, helped him. And he's a scientist, so that's why he went into that line of area, because he was just through science, mainly through him.
Yeah.
And I happened to remember, I had this vision such and such. And he said, oh, you as well? And I thought, what? I did not expect that answer. I didn't expect him to say anything. I just did not expect that. But, so there we go.
Hallucinogens have had a big effect on humans and the way we are today.
Yeah.
I watched the documentary, and the scientist who was comparing the documentary, presenting it, he said if it wasn't for, and I think he said psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms, if it wasn't for psilocybin, we would still be dragging our knuckles on the floor. We just wouldn't have evolved. And they're saying, or he said, that evolution is at the foot of all these hallucinogens that are natural in nature. And this was what the witch hunts were about. We'll cover that again in a few podcasts. That was never a war on witches. That was a war on consciousness.
Yeah. I think we need to get Mr. Robot into one of these shows, Roger. It's with Mike. I think it'd be quite an interesting conversation between two of them. I really think it'd be very amazing.
I got two comments I want to make now. With you, John, and Mr. Robot, when you did your interview with him, I don't really think you or Mr. Robot understood how important that was, because like he was sitting there talking to you about all these experiences he had, and you turn around and say, well, I've had the same thing, and I've never taken drugs.
I did, yeah.
So I think that kind of opened up a whole avenue for him there, because that was very important. And also, when it comes to society too, not just hallucinogenics, but what I found out was like we wouldn't even have freaking civilization if it wasn't for beer. Beer goes all the way back. It seems like the creation of beer happened just shortly before or shortly after they started building cities. That by itself is something that most people don't want to admit. You know what I mean? The fact that their whole way of living is because of beer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I just that blew my mind when I first found that out. Like, and I don't drink beer. I sobered up and everything, but I have the common sense to say, man, there's more than just a coincidence there. Yeah. There is, when you stop and think about it. So,
well, the ancient Egyptians were heavily into beer and wine manufacture, and they used to be into anything that changed their perception of reality. So all the hallucinogens, this is what the fleur de lis is. The fleur de lis means flower of the lily, and this particular flower opens up during the hours of daylight, and it closes, submerges and closes again when it starts to get dark. And because of this fact, it bookended the day. So to the ancient Egyptians, it represented just evolution and life itself and reality. They used to take the lily and put it into wine, and there was a researcher that done this. And when they used to drink the wine after it had been soaked for a certain amount of time, they used to enter an altered state of consciousness. So this particular researcher took the lily and worked out that it was 0.6% DMT, and he said that it's the DMT, the dimethyltryptamine, inside the fleur de lis, which is known as the mark of royalty, because that's one of the things they used to give the kings when on their way to becoming a pharaoh in the ritual of the twice-born. And it goes back before that, the fleur de lis. It goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and it's always mentioned with royalty. It's all over the streets of Paris as well. And Dan Brown said that this was because that Jesus and Mary Magdalene had a child called Sarah, if I believe, and she married into the line of the Merovingian kings in France. That's why the fleur de lis is all over there. It's a flower of the lily, mark of royalty. It always traces back. I mean, the Prince of Wales feathers is the fleur de lis. It always goes back to royalty. And it's because of what was done in Egypt 1500 BC and before.
That's amazing, isn't it? check out my mic on. Whew. I don't know.
There's a lot of information there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
This podcast, I thought to myself when I started it, because I'd written the book and I'd still had all this knowledge that I was gagging to get out. So 5 years ago, I done the podcast, and I thought when I started it, I'll do it in short chapters like the book, very short chapters, so that because there's a lot of information and it gives people a chance to understand the information that's being given out, because it's completely mind altering. So I started it off, I thought it would be about an hour and a half. It ended up 7 hours of speech over, and I think it's 17 episodes.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I never knew I could do that.
Yeah. I started a solo podcast, and I did a few episodes, and I thought, well, maybe might scratch it to about 10 now if I'm lucky. I think I'm in 20s now, and I'm still going on it. I don't know when it's going to end. You know, I keep finding new subjects to talk about.
But that's fantastic. People don't follow their gut feelings enough, in my opinion. They always want to do something for a living, or go and earn money, or just have this thought, and they just drop it at the first hurdle. It's so important in life to follow your gut feeling.
Yeah, totally.
Follow what you're good at.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Right. I think we're going to wrap this up, because it's gone on quite hour and 40 minutes. Anything you want to add, Roger? If we wrap it up.
No, I'm good. I'm just sticking around and recording.
Okay. Yeah, I started to get some mental blocks. Then that's usually my cue when I start to hit walls. That's them. Tell the side saying, right, you got to stop now. Because I tend to when I know it's not an interview, this is just a podcast. But when I'm interviewing, I fly through the interview, and all of a sudden I get to a point, boom. It's like, oh, right, now I've got to stop now. This happens every time.
Yeah.
So it's getting that way now. My mind's starting to go blank. It's time to say, okay, end this now then. So.
Well, it's been a pleasure being here, gentlemen.
Yeah, it's always great to talk to you, like in all fairness. Always learn from you, from things you say.
And it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. I love to give a little chat and hear your point of view on it. And any questions as well. I'd always answer any questions as I can, because that would stretch my knowledge, because this information is it's all in there somewhere. It's just that it was so many years, nearly 2 decades. Some of it's fallen out the other ear, and to make room for some other stuff.
You in my experience, you need you've got to get it out, because for years I didn't. When I was having stuff, I didn't, because there was no one to talk to. And as soon as I started to talk to people about it, I started to move forward. I think, oh no, now things are starting to progress.
Yeah, it's
like you've got to. You can't. Sometimes you're in a situation where you can't really talk to people because they just don't understand. But if you can get it out, you've got to do it. I think it's important, and I think it's really good that we're doing this, for sure.
There's a phrase in Freemasonry: once a Freemason, always a Freemason. Yeah. And the reason is because you can't be untold something. You can't unsee something. Once you see it, once you know it, that's it. It changes your life from that moment onwards. And this subject is one of those subjects.
Yeah, sure. There we go. Right, I'm going to end it here. This will be, hopefully, if it's okay with you, we'll be returning next week this time, if you're all good for that.
Yeah, I'm up for that.
I can't remember what the episode 2 is now. I did see it when I looked on the podcast, but I can't remember it offhand. But obviously we'll be bringing it out next week. I can't remember it. There we are. But next week I will bring in the episode 2, and it's I think episode 2 starts when you start researching into different areas from the past. I think that's episode 2. I just can't remember which part it was.
Might be the works of art that I
yes, it could be. Yes, I think it could have been. Yeah. So
what was involved in them?
Okay then. So we'll wrap this up. Thanks,
gentlemen,
guys.
Thank you very much.
And cheers, Roger, for helping us out, for joining us. You gone? Okay. Until next time, guys. Bye for now.
See you soon, fellas. Money go.